tell us what your fears are, because we've listened to also to the Senate President, who was talking about, you know, the need to dialogue. We're talking about how this constitution actually makes room for that. But then when it comes to making a new constitution or making, you know, having a sovereign national conference, as it were, if I'm not quoting him out of context, that we would actually be stretching our current constitution, you know, beyond its limits.
But the Senate President is to some extent, he's right. You see, I too believe that the sovereignty of a national conference can only be achieved after the fact. You can't have a sovereign national conference ab initio. It is the process that will say whether it is sovereign or not. It is the process. If it is inclusive, if it is organized in a manner that brings everybody on board, and because all right now we have a sovereign, we have a president, we have an executive, we have structures on ground, and without prejudice to them. But it doesn't stop us from dialoguing. And at the end of the dialogue, it doesn't stop us from having a report. And at the end of the day, it doesn't stop that report from reflecting the true yearnings of Nigerians. And at the end of the day, it doesn't stop us benchmarking that constitution that we have now with the report or the product of an inclusive dialogue.
But just quickly, touch on your own personal fears as to what might not happen, because it was seen that when the president announced, you know, this advisory committee, a host of people, you know, had new hopes and said, if the presidency is supporting it, then we truly might be having something worthwhile at the end of the day. But aren't we hoping for too much, you know, all at once?
Well, if you lose hope, you've lost everything. And if you have an opportunity and you don't seize it, well, that means you're not seizing the moment. We have an opportunity to have a dialogue. A dialogue is a reality. A dialogue is a necessity. We are not only discussing constitution, but we must discuss our development challenges. What are those things that aid or abet or hinder our development processes in the various sections of the country? If we take a look at this country, for example, look at the 6 geopolitical zones. Each has its unique challenge, its unique social issues, its unique economic issues, and its unique political issues. And you need those people, each of those sections of the country need to have a space to be able to articulate that thing. My view, or my fear, is that, which I believe can be overcome, is that if we don't manage the process in such a way, it has to be a bottom-up discussion. It has to be, we first have to do some aggregation, right? And so the national conference itself will be a reconciliation.
I don't think that will be any problem for Nigerians again.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of the outcome, because over time we have lived in a society, in a country where promises are never kept, where promises or recommendations or the voices of the people are given any kind of consideration. So if finally they say this is what they want as a people and as a nation, what's the guarantee, taking it from history, that it will be adhered to?
In the first place, the fact that we're where we are now is because some people have listened to the voices of the people. Because you will know that there has been a groundswell, right, of demand for a discussion, right? Now, the product of that discussion, I don't expect us to go away feeling that, what I'm saying is that the win-win situation is where nobody gets everything that they want. We can't all get everything we want. So how do we manage a situation whereby we arrive at a space where we get the best for the most for the future generation in a manner that anything that will extremely threaten the economic growth, the political stability, and the social harmony of the people in this country. Mark you, people have talked about things like no-go areas and places not to discuss and whatever. But what happens when you have a meeting that does not have an agenda? It is always inconclusive. So, in the first place, I think we need to articulate a common agenda that each discussion group.
Should there be no-go areas?
No doubt. Sorry, Jamila, no doubt you must have an agenda. But when you say no-go areas, some say those are the areas that has actually warranted that particular discussion. And if you say these are the areas we shouldn't touch, you're just trying to.
I don't think there's.
You're just trying to run around the circle, and at the end of the day, make people believe that you've done what they've always wanted.
No, I think the use of no-go area was a military, word that was couched that the no-go area. But quite frankly, anything can be discussed, but it must be discussed within a framework. It must be discussed with a purpose.
And that's the agenda you're talking about.
Yes, and it must be discussed with reality. Number one, there is one fact. Nigeria is, as we said earlier, Nigeria is a geographical expression, a space that is a reality. So, now you can't have a discussion that you want to expand Nigeria to Benin, can you? So that's a no-go area. And you can't have a discussion that you want to cut a place out without having those people have having some input.
I've listened to you talk about, economic growth, political stability, in that order.
Yes.
And I'm wondering which
not necessarily in that order.
But every time we've talked about it, it always comes out in that order. I mean, you always talk about economic growth and political stability next. I'm wondering which comes first, really. Is it, one would say that, they both, affect.
They are mutually reinforcing.
But at the same time, you also spoke of an expanding economic broad base, as it were, which a lot of people might not agree, because I agree with, in a sense that we're talking about an economy largely dependent on oil. What exactly is expanding about it?
Well, you see, in the first place, it shouldn't be entirely dependent on oil.
But isn't that the reality?
That is the reality, because we are not even thinking through. That we are not even actually looking at how to explore and exploit our growth potentials. Economic growth potential does not mean a single commodity economy. As a matter of fact, that is a threat to economic growth, because once you have a problem with a single economy, then you have a problem. But what we're saying is this, that look, social stability, right? Social stability or social harmony will bring out the best in people. I'll tell you something. In this country, the biggest or the best or the most important resource is not the gold, the oil, or anything. It's the human being. It's the human resource. And if you don't put them at a space whereby they can express their ingenuity, there are countries in this world that haven't got the 1/10 of the resources that Nigeria has. And if we get our mind out of that space that thinks it is the oil that is the resource that we have, it is not the oil. It is the people that sit there. It is the people with brains. Because if you have all the oil and the gold in the world, and between the two ears you don't have anything in it, that oil will belong to somebody else.
Would you say that we have put the people as our prime resource?
I think that we are still yet to get to that space. I think Nigeria needs to be investors in people. We need to invest in the people. And when we invest,
what is hindering us from doing that?
Well, it's exclusion. That's one. Social exclusion is one. We have governance challenges, and the governance challenges may be structural. It's not everything that is corruption that is either intentional or malicious. If you have your poor financial management systems and you don't collect data, then you make space for leaking taps in the financial system. And when there are leaking taps in the financial systems, other people go there and collect what is just like the leaking pipelines. So the first thing you need to do is to fix the structures, fix the pipelines. So those are some of these things could be structural, and you can address them in several ways.